The People of the Secret, Chapter 11, Sufi, Discourses, Rituals, Initiation. The team's experience led them to look at published Western opinions about Sufis and Sufism in a critical light. The conclusions of Western investigators suffered, almost without exception, from prior assumption. It seemed that those with a religious orientation found data to prove that the Sufis are a religious group within Islam. Those with a bias to occultism found plenty to support their view that the Sufis were primarily occultists. Anthropologists found interesting relics of primitive ceremonial. The same process could even be observed within finer gradations. Christians found activity among Sufis which they regarded as essentially Christian. Occultists with a bias towards one or other form of magic found the Sufis clearly engaged in their own specialty. To investigators working from outside, the Sufis appeared to offer a sort of magic mirror in which all could see what they had decided in advance was there to be seen. Thus, communists, on the rare occasions when they have deigned to look outside their own canon, can discover that Sufism is a sort of precursor of the enlightenment that Marx was to bring. The social aspect of Sufism attracted the poor, especially those in towns from whose midst many of the early Sufis had sprung. It also evoked certain sympathies among feudal intellectuals who were growing increasingly aware of their humiliating subordinate role at the feudal courts. The philosophical aspect of Sufism, in its turn, aroused the partisanship of many men of culture, since in some measure it freed human reason from the stifling clasp of dogmatism. Professor Rom Landau, who investigated many fringe religions in books like His God is My Adventure, was attracted to the study of the Sufi teacher Ibn el-Arabi and sees in him an important influence in European literature. In China, Dr. Li Sung, whose mind reaches out to overall concepts, has analyzed the teachings of the Naqshbandi Dervish school and suggests that the activities of this order, in the Gobi and China proper, represent the maintenance and sustaining of the most ancient human developmental teachings which we would do well to investigate if we are to arrive at a higher destination of humankind. In India, the President of the Republic has edited a book in which Sufism is seen in terms of morality and the attainment of bliss. Sufism teaches how to purify oneself, improve one's morals, and build up one's inner and outer life in order to attain perpetual bliss. Its subject matter is the purification of the soul, and its end or aim is the attainment of eternal felicity and blessedness. The team began to realize that the paradoxes which the Sufis habitually use when asked about the nature of their activities were less paradoxical than they seemed. Sayings like, "Sufism is other than any other cult," "Sufism looks like religion, it is not religion," suggest something in the round, which the team sensed very strongly when in close contact with Sufis, but which they could not pin down in any familiar category. The team concluded that no single hypothesis, religious, psychological, magical, or social, would account for the whole of Sufic manifestation. They were driven to accept that the phrase, "he who tastes knows," far from being a piece of double talk, gratuitously irritating, was in fact an irreducible formula for suggesting what, by its very nature, could not be stated explicitly. One member of the team suggested a possible explanation of the centuries-old difficulty of describing the nature of Sufic activity. If, as the Sufis assert, their system reaches areas of the human mind untouched by all other religious or psychological systems, it would follow that all attempts to describe it would necessarily be defective for this reason alone. However difficult it may be to elucidate Sufi activity, there is no lack of people prepared to make an attempt. The Index Islamicus, supplement edited by J.D. Pearson, Cambridge, 1962, lists over 80 learned publications on Sufis, mostly by specialists, in the 4 years ending 1960, and this list is by no means complete. If full-length works are added to this list, the contributions of Orientalists to the subject of Sufism are in the order of one every fortnight from 1956 to 1960. If reprints and works in Eastern languages are included, Sufism is seen to be attracting attention at the rate of one book or monograph every 7 days. It would seem that an unprecedented preoccupation with an occult subject is to be seen all over the world and may offer evidence for the view already advanced here, that the Sufis, for reasons connected with the present state of world affairs, are coming into the open, probably by the technique of arousing interest directly. Even from its brief experience of Sufi activity, the team realized that no account of what it is all about is possible in direct terms, and they realized that certain incidents to which they had not attached any significance were examples of indirect teaching. An example of this from published material is to be found in Garnett's Magic and Mysticism in Turkey already mentioned. Lucy Garnett is quoting from the Mesnevi. When on a visit to a fellow sheikh of great repute, he was asked by a dervish, "What is poverty?" Jalaluddin Rumi did not answer. The question was repeated thrice. When Rumi left, the sheikh reprimanded the dervish for his insolent intrusion, which was the more inexcusable as he, Rumi, fully answered thy question the first time thou didst put it. The dervish, surprised, asked what the answer had been. "A poor man," replied the prior, "is one who, having known Allah, hath his tongue tied." The team decided that it would be pointless to attempt any summary of Sufic activity on analytical lines. They agreed that 3 pieces of material, 1 ancient and 2 modern, probably represented the best attempt they could make at suggesting indirectly the nature of the Sufic activity they had glimpsed. The first is some 20 sentences of comment or instruction to his pupils by Jalaluddin Rumi, 1207 to 1273. The second is an interview with a Sufic teacher in England. The third is a tape-recorded conversation with a Naqshbandi sheikh in Afghanistan. From Rumi. 1. Do not imagine that similar appearances must have similar causes. 2. People learn indirectly as effectively, sometimes more so than directly. 3. If you want to study something, you must undergo the whole course of study. If you are prejudiced about it, you may not be able to study any part at all. 4. You are shocked not by right and wrong, but by the conventional conception of right and wrong. 5. People are affected by things in accordance with their mental and emotional set. 6. People expect things to turn out in a manner laid down by them. Sometimes at least it is just as well for them that they do not have the say in the end. 7. People try to teach, for instance, when what they have to do is to learn. 8. Adopt the superficialities, the parrot cries, even if you think that they are serious, and you will lose. 9. Try to judge with inadequate tools, and you will get nowhere, and even harm others. 10. People are unaware of the real hidden relationship which Sufis have. 11. Things which appear harmless, even desirable, even one's own property, can be extremely dangerous. 12. Neither blind imitation is right, nor blind obedience. 13. Things are repeated again and again in the teaching because people hear, but do not listen. 14. The way in which you may approach what you want may be too long a way to suffice you before you are too late. 15. Things which have to be tackled have to be done at the right time. That time is generally soon. 16. You may think that you understand something, but the slightest experience of it may cause you to lose all your understanding. The teacher helps you when you think he is hindering you. What you think helps you may more than hinder you. Divisive weakness will destroy any unity. The high-minded attitude towards something can go too far. Interview with a Sufi teacher in England. Question. We know Sufism mainly by its ancient and classical literature. What is the value of this material? Answer. This literature is of intellectual and cultural value only, just like any other literature, unless interpreted by a Sufi in a Sufi circle for the particular membership which he is teaching. Question. What is the Sufi teaching entity or unit? Answer. The halqa, ring, a group chosen by a teacher. He may teach it direct or may appoint a khalifa, deputy. The chief teacher's halqa is the head one. A number of halqas make up the tariqa, path, which is the word for the current school. Question. Why are there so many ways of putting the Sufi study methods? The 3 circles, the arc of ascent and descent, the meditation, concentration, contemplation, and so on. Answer. These are not different ways. They are fragments of the total number of elements in a Sufi school. Like you might say in an ordinary school, there is the class for French, English, geometry, and so on. Each one is a part of the education being offered. The confusion has arisen through people trying to simplify and choosing an attractive series of words for their studies. Question: can Sufism be studied academically? Can one be an intellectual Sufi? Answer: many outward manifestations of Sufism can be studied outwardly. People study and try to practice Sufi exercises, music, literature, and so on. This is not, however, the study of Sufism, which is a matter of participation. Question: do you have to use the term Sufism, which is associated in many minds with Muslim enthusiasts or Western imitators? Answer: most of our activities do not use the word at all. But when there is a reason for using the word, there is no word whose employment will not be challenged by somebody or other. Question: are Sufis more scientific than religionists in their attitudes and activities? Answer: they are, because they are practical as well as being experientialists. They know which parts of human experience are useful tools, which are methods and ways, and which are truly higher, spiritual, and so on. Question: do Sufis proselytize? If so, how? Answer: Sufis select people with certain capacities. This they cannot do by propaganda, because propaganda conditions people to certain extremes in belief which they would only have to abandon in due course. Question: why do Sufis reject so many people who go to them? Surely Sufism should be for all. Answer: they do not reject anyone who is worthy. But the condition of the man who wants to become a Sufi and what he thinks his condition really is may be two different things. People may be capable of becoming Sufis at one point, then lose the capability. Time may have to pass before they can apply again. Enthusiasm for Sufism or for secrets is no basis for approaching the study. Question: despite the efforts of students, clerics, and Orientalists, it has not yet been decided exactly what Sufism is. Can you say whether it is a religion, or whether it is mainly derived from Christianity, say, or whether it is a psychology? Answer: Sufism cannot be described because it is unique, of its own kind. When a religionist studies it, he may regard it as a religion. He then labels it according to his own scale of religions. A donkey can judge thistles, but he cannot judge melons. Question: how can one judge whether a certain Sufi school or teacher is genuinely representative of Sufism? Answer: you cannot unless you are a Sufi. But if the school or individual resembles a recognizable form of esoteric training or religious organization, and so on, it is less likely to be sufficiently Sufic to develop the individual correctly. Question: by what signs in oneself can one tell whether a teaching is the right one for me? Answer: by sensations and reactions which differ completely from customary ones. Indications which one does not experience through the contact with anything else. In contacting Sufism, you are coming into a relationship with a completely new experience. Its sensation is correspondingly different from established religious or other experiences. Question: do your answers hold good for all inquirers, and would you answer in the same way if you were approached by an Oriental? Answer: answers are, broadly speaking, for a certain time and a certain society. All would depend upon the time and the cultural situation of the inquirer. This is the best way of presenting something of Sufism to a Westerner who has been interested in what he calls higher knowledge in these days. Tape-recorded conversation with a Sufi sheikh in Afghanistan. Question: in your field work in distant countries such as the Western ones, do you encounter difficulties which you do not anticipate? Answer: none. Question: do you have to work through difficulties just as if you had not anticipated them? If so, why? Answer: yes. And because it is in the working through the difficulties that the development of man takes place. Question: is there a value in adopting a psychological system, as we use them in the West, to explain the past, to work with the present, to solve one's problems, to make possible living on a higher level? Answer: by itself, no. You must have certain special exercises and practices held by one of our delegates. Question: such of your representatives as we have met have not always encouraged us. This is why we have come to you. Answer: You have come to us because we have permitted it. You cannot go over the heads of representatives like meeting the managing director when the manager does not give satisfaction. Our delegates know what to do, when to blow hot, and when to blow cold. Question: Do the meanings of studies which we make from time to time become known to us later? Answer: Yes. Question: Do you use objects and concepts for teaching that are unknown to us? Answer: Objects and concepts which you do not link with higher teaching as you know it? Yes. Question: Is there an extrasensory link between you and your delegates, between them and us, and between people past and future? Answer: There is. Question: Are you concerned with arts and practices which are used by non-religious groups? Answer: Yes. Because the use of a thing is not known to you, do not suppose that it has no use. Because a thing has fallen into the wrong hands, do not suppose that there are not hands which know how to work with it without its adverse associations. Question: How can so many sincere people all be following different faiths, all find something of value in them, and yet have beliefs and opinions which are sometimes diametrically opposed to one another? Answer: This cannot happen if we discover real sincerity. The kind of sincerity which these people are using is not connected with faith, but with a personal indulgence. They like it, so it is true. They find something which they want, they call it something of value. It is of no spiritual value or importance. It is of social value. When they discover that they would be as well satisfied with any faith, as they call it, just like the other sincere people, they will start to look for real faith and real religion beyond the childish game. Question: Why do people follow teachers and teachings with great intensity and still fail to find truth? Answer: Such people are not looking for truth. They are looking for teachers and teachings. If they knew what truth was so that they could pursue it, we would find them, as we do indeed find people. It is the people in between, the people with capacity for sincerity who are not taught it, because organized groups and religions make use of the people's insincerity. The chief way in which they do that is to offer emotional rewards and status rewards, which the people accept. Question: Why do you use so many different terms for the Sufi path? Answer: Sometimes where Sufi has an honorific value, we shun it, partly to avoid self-indulgence, partly to leave the field clear for imitators who present unsufic organizations under this name. Where the word Sufi is unpopular and represents in the minds of, for example, Hindus and some Westerners, Mohammedan fanatic, we may use it to demonstrate that we are not what we are labeled. Sometimes again, we use a wide variety of other names because of the convenience or otherwise of working. Many of our organizations have no spiritual aspect as far as the outward man can see, and these work the best, unhampered. But I cannot talk about those to a person who already deals in the spiritual cloak of things. Question: Do you believe in merit from deeds, in punishment, in secret knowledge? Answer: There is merit in deeds only if you can disconnect yourself from anticipation of merit. There is punishment if you fear punishment, because if you act in fear, you should be punished, even if you have done what you think is good. There is secret knowledge, which will never be perceived by anyone who is thinking about secret knowledge, because its form and communication are invisible to such people. Question: What is the major difference between your treatment of students and that of other schools? Answer: There are many. To single out the one which fewest people can understand, we work to contact people at a level deeper than working on their emotions. All other systems concentrate upon conversion, giving people attention, giving them things to do, tests to perform, and so on. Our major test is to leave people alone until they find out whether or not they can feel anything true about us. We have discovered, you see, that the system which is supposedly testing people by means of trials is in fact maintaining their attention in contact with itself. The result is that people are trained, conditioned, you call it today, to concentrate upon the school or system. They have become brainwashed, though they call it faith. If they reject not becoming trained, all the better for the system in question, for it is spared the problem of a recalcitrant in its ranks thereafter. With us, it is different. We cannot survive with conditioned people in our ranks. We reach something deeper in them. Question: do the Sufis concede that there are other valid systems transmitted from the past? Answer: a few years ago, a Russian mission examined many practitioners of yoga, attempting to deduce from their practices the original system upon which it was built. They learned, of course, certain things, such as the fact that many yogic postures and breathings have an auto-hypnotic effect. But since these people did not know the possible effects of posture, breathing, and so on, they were not in a position to deduce the effects. When we study one of the traditional systems, like Christian prayer recitals or yogic postures, we are able to know what they were originally intended for. Just as you, as a Westerner, would know what the accoutrements of a soldier were originally for, if you saw one, after you had served in the army of the period when such apparatus was used. Unless you grasp this point, there is little use for further discussion. One particular type of Sufic teacher has consistently baffled observers, and not only Western observers, whether he has been recognized as a Sufic figure or not. This is the crazed saint, perhaps the ultimate exemplar of indirect teaching, achieving his results by oblique action. His students suspect the nature of this activity in proportion to their degree, but the activity of the crazed saint remains incomprehensible to outsiders. One member of the team obtained an interview with a pupil, already aged, of such a teacher. The interview took place in Kafiristan and, appropriately enough, under a mulberry tree. The old gentleman, who must have been about 70, was known as Sheikh Hindki. He had come originally from India. "In my hometown, there used to be a strange man. People all liked him, and they used to ask his advice on many subjects. He came from Central Asia somewhere, and we called him Bokhari Saheb. He had a small carpet shop in one of the bazaars. He used to have tempers which nobody could account for. Sometimes he got angry about the slightest things. Sometimes he seemed to be unjust or ridiculous. I used to go to sit with him from the age of about 16 years, observing what he said and did. After 3 or 4 years, I realized that it was not what he said or how he said it. It was the effect which he caused. For instance, when a man wanted to get a job with the local municipality, Bokhari Saheb went to the town clerk and told him that there was something wrong with the man. So he didn't get the job, but the man who did. He died suddenly when the roof of his office collapsed. There were hundreds of incidents like that, spread over many years. I began to realize that Bokhari was an agent for something or someone who knew something and could protect people no matter how it was done. It was usually done in the last way, in which you would expect it. Eventually I asked him about it, and he said, "If you want to learn, join me and work with me. Familiarity, companionship, and asking no questions will harmonize you with it, so that much of your future time will be saved." I used to act as an assistant to him whenever he wanted something done or said, and so on. I still could not learn what was the source of this wisdom, which was disguised by peculiarities. I stayed with him for 40 years. One day he said, "I shall die in a fortnight or less. Go to Baluristan and become the servant of the Namus." In 10 days he was dead. After seeing to his funeral, I came here, after quite a long journey and many difficulties finding the place. Now I play my part, and I am on the way. A fair amount of Sufic literature exists on the activities of teachers in the crazed saint pattern. The following is an attempt to summarize his qualities. 1. Supernatural powers. 2. Healing. 3. Physical indulgences. 4. Takes money. 5. Redistributes money, gifts, etc. 6. Never withholds action because of lack of money. 7. Exercises are an alteration of harmony and opposition, of piety and apparent impiety. 8. Goes against the norms of the society in which he lives and works. 9. Is never understood, because people who support him seek to conceal his excesses as quirks and not as an essential part of his operations. Also because people do not recognize that some of his actions are illustrative, miming the weaknesses of others. 10. Is opposed by the orthodox authorities, civil and religious. 11. Attracts many people who follow only the lure of the strange, who are thought to be his disciples, creating an incorrect outer impression of his activities and associates. 12. Has dance, music, or other physical movements exercises thought to be religious by the converts, to be improper by the orthodox. 13. Has spent a great deal of time in mortification and also in indulgence. The twin operation of these, their polarity, releases in him a strange power. He attempts to release it in those with whom he is in touch as well. 14. Usually only a small, acceptable part of what he says and does is reported, and this becomes respectable, may even become a subcult. Or he may even come to be absorbed after his death as a saint by the Orthodox Church. 15. Maybe from far away, a barbaric figure, rough, foreigner, etc. In the matter of recruitment to Sufi groups and the ritual initiation, the team found 3 references in the Dervishes by Brown, already quoted, which covered their limited experience. These are given for interest. Whenever anyone desires to enter this tariqa, path, and feels an affection for the sheikh of a taqiyya, dervish establishment, he seeks for a murid, disciple, already belonging to it and expresses his wish to become a disciple of the sheikh. In reply, the murid enjoins upon him to continue frequenting the taqiyya and to wait upon its members and visitors. The service required of him is of a domestic character and must be performed by the pupil, whatever may be his social or official position. It lasts for several months or a year and serves to increase his love for the order of the sheikh and prevents him falling off or joining any other taqiyya. He is not, however, under any obligation to continue it and may leave and join another if he chooses. The initiation of a probationer may not take place for some considerable time. The bayat or election of the murid, disciple, by placing of hands on his head or the hand of the sheikh in his hand, in some cases only takes place several years after his original admission to the order. The period much depends upon the will of the sheikh and the degree of knowledge and spiritual acquirements of the murid. The sheikh, or the murid, is held to see a vision either of the Prophet, Ali, or the Pir, chief of the order. And this ceremonial is the only one of which the secret, if indeed one exists, has not been divulged to me. The murid at that time takes an oath never to divulge it and not to commit certain ordinary sins. At the actual admission, in the case reported by Brown to the Qadiri order, the sheikh takes the hand of the aspirant and says, "This hand is the hand of the sheikh, Abd el-Qadir, and the director of the true path is in your hand. I am the sheikh of Abd el-Qadir. I accepted this hand from him, and now with it I accept of you as one of his disciples." Aspirant, "And I also accept of you as such. Sheikh, I therefore do now admit you,